So intensive farming versus organic, really, rather than extensive farming. Usually the comparison is between those two. All right, so we'll rattle through this very quickly, but it is a popular one that crops up quite a bit. Okay, so let's get ready. Slideshow beginning, and we're off. Okay, so explain the difference, advantages and disadvantages of each. Okay, intensive farming, lads, and I think I'll try and connect you also with so what are the characteristics? Okay, factory farming, more industrial advanced methods, massive focus on yield in terms of production. Okay, sometimes now animals are kept, and there's a lot of good stuff there, guys. Uh, very precise. Efficiency is a big word. Everything's got to be efficient, all right? High inputs, okay, very high inputs, generate or and very large amount of produce from sometimes quite a small amount of land, okay? Look, that efficiency can be a good thing, okay? Modern techniques, okay, mean that you get, very high productivity, okay? It maximizes so you shouldn't have as much loss in terms of horticulture and so on. And look, it means it can have lower prices. However, guys, it's got a lot of disadvantages, okay? High carbon footprint, squeezing out traditional loss of culture. It's bad in many ways that smaller farmers can't compete anymore. Questionable whether the quality is as good because, for example, they might have a high amount of medicines in them and stuff like that. It's not nice. It's not natural. You would question whether it's within the five freedoms, but that's the big one. High slurry, high agrochemicals used, high fertilizers, and so on. All right. Whereas extensive, well, don't get too worried into it. We're really more into organic farming, okay? And we need to be clear on what's meant by organic farming, okay? No chemicals, strictly speaking, very well regulated, natural alternatives to chemical fertilizers and things like that, providing better habitats for wildlife. But of course, we'll see, look, it's nowhere near the same level of produce out of big amounts of ground, and maybe some of well, we'll come to that later on. So the advantages, look, it's the first advantage is to the environment, okay? It's great for biodiversity, these kind of farms, and they also mean less pollution, okay? Mean less pollution. If you're an ethical consumer, you're much happier with these better values than this mass produced food, okay? And it gets a better price. However, guys, very time consuming because you can't just give everything, you can't pour pesticides over everything. You got to weed properly. There's very heavy rules on it. It's more expensive. That can be a disadvantage for a consumer because it's not mass produced. So consumers can't afford it. So that's a disadvantage of it. You could go on. The yield is low, so it's more expensive to produce. That's why the price is high. So the profit doesn't tend to be great. And some people say this land that people are using for even like hillside farming or organic farming would be far better just planted into woodlands, which would help the environment that way, or maybe could be better for biodiversity. But in theory, look, they're going to have less damage to the soil. You will have less nitrates coming into waterways, etc., etc. Better animal welfare. All right. So back we'll go then, lads. Now, if you don't mind, to the I'll stop sharing that. Back we'll go now to the questions where this crops up in the papers. Is it here, I think? So I'll go back, if you don't mind, girls, to 2014. So you'll see what crops over and over again. Essentially, what's the difference between organic farming and extensive farming, okay? How is it different? There it was there, okay? We looked at that was a production question. There, yeah, classic question. If you've got a beef farm, I would probably veer to entering this for a beef or dairy. Maybe dairy is even the best one if you think about that a lot to say, what will an intense beef or dairy farm look like, okay? You could go with the beef food lot. Advantages of it, disadvantages. That would be a great question. Okay, something tells me it cropped up very recently. But beef or dairy, okay, that's a production question. There we go again. 2019, same this time they focused on organic farming. Okay, why would someone now for probably would be better as a beef farm? I don't think dairy farming could ever be really that you could answer it about organic dairy farming. You go for beef. Why are some farmers doing it? For the environment, and they think that it creates better food or whatever, or they want for the look. Go to the answer. Check that. Three differences between organic and inorganic means exactly extensive. And what are the disadvantages of organic farm? We looked at that. Okay. Factors which can affect consumer prices. We talked about that already. We'll deal with that later on. That's the stuff about food processing. Blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, that there question is a little bit about an extensive sort of pig fattening system. I didn't like that question, but check the answers on it actually. That's the one about food production. Yeah, 2025 guys had intensive beef farming, so probably take a look at it. But organic farming is possibly a more likely essay to crop up. All right, right. Stop share. Stop recording.